Honestly, I still have nightmares about them, Krezznik muttered, his three eye stalks quivering as he poured another glass of fermented root juice. The way they just stand there, looking at you. I clicked my mandibles in amusement. Another veteran. Another exaggerated tale about the humans. The galactic community had been buzzing about those bizarre bipeds for decades, but surely half of what we'd heard was embellishment. Come on, Krez, I said, leaning back in my hover chair. They're just another species. The Council wouldn't have granted them membership if they were as dangerous as everyone claims. Krezznik's skin flashed warning orange. You weren't there. You didn't see what I saw on Proxima Station. Around us, the Neutron's Edge, the most popular drinking spot on Orbital Platform 9, hummed with the usual cacophony of languages and laughter. 12 different species relaxed, argued, flirted, and traded war stories over glowing drinks. I had come to interview Krezznik about first contact with humans. I wasn't expecting another barroom ghost story. Fine, I said, activating my recorder. Tell me what happened. But stick to facts, not legends. My readers want the truth. Krezznik drained his glass and leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow cut through the ambient noise like a plasma scalpel. You want the truth? The truth is, humans are the only species I've ever seen make the Vrex'Nar retreat. That got my attention. The Vrex'Nar, apex predators of 3-star systems, 6-limbed carnivores with regenerative tissue and natural armor plating. They'd waged war on half the Council before we managed to halt their expansion. And even then, it had been more of a deadlock than a victory. That's not possible, I said, my skepticism faltering. Let me tell you what happened, Krezznik said, his voice low. Then you can decide what's possible. Proxima Station was supposed to be a neutral ground. After their failed campaign into Council space, the Vrex'Nar had begrudgingly agreed to negotiations. Proxima, a massive orbital platform circling a gas giant in unclaimed territory, was chosen as the meeting point. Krezznik was part of the security detail, a standard assignment. Look intimidating, follow protocol, let the diplomats do the talking. The Vrex'Nar arrived first, he said. 5 warriors and their dominant. Big female. Scars all over her armor plates. They'd dealt with the Vrex'Nar before. There were protocols. No sudden movements. No showing teeth. No eye contact with the dominant. No gestures that could be misread as a challenge. Basic survival stuff. The human delegation was scheduled to arrive 3 station cycles later. They were newcomers. Barely a century into faster-than-light travel, Krezznik said. But they already had a reputation, unpredictable, emotional, and weirdly lucky. He snorted. First thing you notice? They look unfinished. No exoskeleton, no claws, skin like soft meat, bipedal with these, dangly upper limbs. Kind of pathetic, really. Consisted of 4 members, Ambassador Denzel Washington, his 2 advisors, Dr. Patricia Fuentes and Commander Jackson Blake, who and a security officer named Olivia Parker. The Vrex'Nar dominant, her name was untranslatable, but we called her Razor Fang. She took one look at the humans and did that thing with her. Mouth plates that passes for laughter among their kind. Krezznik said, I remember thinking this was going to be a disaster. The negotiations began smoothly enough. The Council mediator, a Cynthia diplomat named Glypor, facilitated discussions about territory. Boundaries and resource rights hours passed without incident, which was unusual when Vrex'Nar were involved. Then came the banquet. Krezznik said, his eye stalks drooping at them. Emery Protocol dictated a shared meal to solidify diplomatic relations. The station staff had prepared carefully separate food for each species, proper eating stations, everything by the book. But books, as it turns out, rarely account for everything. The trouble started when one of the Vrex'Nar warriors, a particularly aggressive male named Grashtak, began eyeing the humans during the meal. Vrex'Nar are primarily carnivores, and something about the human soft, unprotected flesh seemed to trigger predatory instincts. I noticed it first. Krezznik said, the way Grashtak was watching. Parker, The human security officer, his hunting posture was subtle but unmistakable if you have seen it before. And I had on worlds where the Vrex'Nar consumed the local fauna. Krezznik reported his observations to Glypor, who assured him that Razor Fang had her warriors under control, but Krezznik wasn't convinced the tension in that room was building like a faulty reactor core, he said. And Parker, she noticed it too. I could tell by the way she positioned herself between Grashtak and Ambassador Washington. When the banquet concluded, the delegates moved to a reception area for more informal discussions. The station's artificial day cycle was transitioning to night, and the lighting dimmed accordingly, perfect conditions for a predator. It happened. Proxima station incident so fast, Krezznik said, his voice dropping to a whisper. One moment everything was normal. The next, Grashtak lunged across the room straight at Ambassador Washington. In the split second that followed, several things happened simultaneously. Glypor shouted for security. Razor Fang roared, what sounded like a command for Grashtak to stand down, and Officer Parker moved. I have seen combat droids with slower reaction times, Krezznik said, pouring himself another drink with a trembling appendage. Parker stepped between Grashtak and the ambassador, planted her feet, and when that 7F killing machine came within range, she did something. I still can't believe. Krezznik paused for dramatic effect, his eye stalks fully extended. She slapped him, he said finally, one open hand right across the facial plates. I blinked all four of my eyes. In disbelief, she slapped a Vrex'Nar warrior. That's suicide. That's exactly what I thought, Krezznik exclaimed. But here's where it gets strange. Grashtak stopped. Just stopped mid-lunge, froze like he'd been hit with a stasis field. According to Krezznik, the room fell silent. Even Razor Fang seemed stunned by what had happened. The slap wasn't particularly powerful, certainly, not enough to injure a Vrex'Nar through their natural armor, but its effect was undeniable. Parker just stood there, hands still raised, looking Grashtak dead in all three of his eyes, and said something in human language that the translators rendered as sit down. 2 words. Vel'Nara, just 2 words. And Grashtak, veteran of countless battles, consumer of worlds, apex predator of the known galaxy, sat down. I'm not talking figuratively. Krezznik clarified. He literally lowered himself to the floor. His aggressive posture completely disappeared. He looked, I don't even know how to describe it. Ashamed, the other Vrex'Nar warriors shifted uncomfortably, but made no move to intervene. Razor Fang approached slowly, her head tilted in what appeared to be curiosity. Ambassador Washington just resumed his conversation like nothing had happened. Krezznik continued. Parker returned to her position by the wall, and the rest of the evening proceeded without incident. The next day, Razor Fang requested a private meeting with the human delegation. Krezznik wasn't privy to what was discussed, but when they emerged, the Vrex'Nar delegation agreed to all the council's proposed terms, a diplomatic victory previously thought impossible before they left. I overheard Razor Fang speaking to Parker. Krezznik said, my translator caught only fragments, but she said something about humans being worthy adversaries and natural dominance coming from a Vrex'Nar that's practically worship. I sat back in my hover chair trying to process Krezznik's story. So you are telling me the most feared predatory species in the galaxy was cowed by a slap, and 2 words from a human. Krezznik's skin rippled with affirmation patterns. I know how it sounds. But after that, I started researching. Humans, turns out they evolved alongside predators on their homeworld, not just as prey, but as predators themselves. Many species evolved that way. I pointed out, not like humans. Krezznik insisted they are persistence predators. Before they developed technology, they would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They can regulate their body temperature. The slap. That changed everything through something called sweating, which lets them run for incredible distances, and they evolved specific neurological adaptations for throwing objects with deadly accuracy. I clicked my mandibles skeptically. That doesn't explain why a slap would subdue a Vrex'Nar. That's the fascinating part, Krezznik said, leaning forward excitedly. Humans domesticated predators on their home world. They have these creatures called dogs that evolved from wolves pack hunters with impressive capabilities. Humans somehow turned them into companions through a process they call training. And this is relevant because the techniques they used, the tone of voice, the physical corrections, the assertion of dominance, they are instinctive to humans. Parker wasn't trying a calculated diplomatic strategy. She was responding the way her ancestors did to dangerous predators for thousands of years, and somehow it triggered something deep in Vrex'Nar psychology. I considered this, if true, it would make a fascinating article. So humans just naturally know how to handle apex predators, not just handle them. Krezznik corrected, domesticate them after the Proxima incident. The Vrex'Nar requested human advisors for their military within 3 cycles. Reports of Vrex'Nar aggression dropped by 70%. They are still dangerous, but now they are dangerous on behalf of the Council, not against it, because of a slap. Said still incredulous, Krezznik's eye stalks quivered with amusement. The slap was just the beginning. It's what happened after that really changed things. My recording device beeped. Indicating it had reached its storage limit, I switched to a fresh data crystal go on what happened after Proxima stationation. Krezznik glanced around the bar nervously. That's where the story gets really interesting and considerably more classified. His voice dropped to a whisper. Have you ever heard of something called the Taming Protocol before he could continue his communication device? Chimed, he checked it and immediately stood up. I have to go official business, wait, I protested. You can't leave the story half-finished-ish. What's the Taming Protocol? Krezznik leaned down, his voice barely audible. He finded Officer Parker. She's stationed on Europa Outpost. Now tell her I sent you and Vel'Nara, be careful. Some stories aren't meant to be told. With that cryptic warning, Krezznik vanished into the crowd, leaving me with more questions than answers, and a burning curiosity about these strange bipeds called humans. Little did I know that my pursuit of this story would lead me into direct contact with both humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy and its most terrifying weapon to be continued. Finding Officer Olivia Parker proved more challenging than expected. Europa Outpost wasn't exactly a tourist destination, a military installation carved into the ice of Jupiter's moon, accessible only with proper clearance. Searching for Officer Parker, fortunately being a journalist for Galactic Perspectives, opened some doors, though not as many as I'd hoped. Your request to interview Officer Parker has been denied, the human security officer told me, his face impressively impassive. She's currently engaged in classified operations. I fluttered my wing membranes in frustration. I'd traveled 17 light years for this story, and I wasn't about to be stopped by bureaucracy. Please inform Officer Parker that Naro wishes to speak with her about Proxima Station. I said, playing my last card, and that Krezznik sent me the mention of Krezznik's name produced an interesting reaction. The security officer's pupils dilated slightly and his heart rate increased, both signs easily detected by my sensory ridges. Wait. Here, he said curtly, disappearing through a set of reinforced doors. The waiting area of Europa Outpost was sparse and utilitarian. Designed with humans in mind, the temperature was uncomfortably low for my species, and the gravity settings matched Earth's standard rather than the adjusted levels most stations used. For multi-species comfort. It was a not-so-subtle reminder that I was in human territory. Now, 20 minutes later, the door slid open again, instead of the security officer. A woman entered the room. She was tall for a human, with dark skin and hair pulled back tightly from her face. What struck me most were her eyes, alert, assessing, predatory. I'm Commander Parker, she said, extending a hand in what I recognized as a human greeting gesture. I understand you have been looking for me. I touched my appendage to her hand briefly, noting the firmness of her grip. Thank you for seeing me, Commander. I'm Nara Sr., correspondent for Galactic Perspectives. You mentioned Krezznik, she said, getting straight to the point. How easy the old 3 eyes nervous. I replied honestly, He told me about Proxima stationation, but left the story unfinished. He mentioned something called the Taming Protocol before rushing off Parker's expression. Remained neutral, but I detected a subtle shift in her posture, more alert, more guarded. "Follow me," the truth about humans said. After a moment's consideration, not here, she led me through a labyrinth of corridors, each requiring biometric scans for access. We eventually arrived at what appeared to be private quarters, Spartan, but comfortable by human standards, recording devices off. Parker said as the door sealed behind us. It wasn't a request. I deactivated my equipment, reluctantly. "This is highly irregular, Commander. I came for an interview, and I'm giving you one," she replied, gesturing for me to sit. "But some things stay off the record." She poured 2 glasses of clear liquid from a bottle labeled vodka in human script offering. Owned to me, I accepted it cautiously. Human consumables were generally safe for my species, though the effects could be unpredictable. Krezznik shouldn't have mentioned Taming Protocol to a journalist, Parker said, taking a seat opposite me. But since he did, and since you have come all this way, I will tell you what I can, the official version at least. I felt a tingle of excitement along my neural pathways, and the unofficial version. Parker smiled, a gesture that reminded me uncomfortably of how predatory species display their teeth. That depends on what you do with the official one. She took a sip of her drink before continuing. "What do you know about human history, Vera? The basics." I replied, "Evolved on Earth, developed spaceflight relatively recently, joined the Galactic Council about 70 years ago. I meant our evolutionary history." Parker clarified, specifically our relationship with other species on our planet, when I admitted my knowledge was limited. Parker nodded, Asif. "This confirmed something: humans didn't evolve to be the strongest creatures on Earth," she began. "We weren't the fastest or the most naturally armed, but we had 3 advantages: endurance, intelligence, and a remarkable capacity for interspecies communication." She activated a holographic display on her wrist device, projecting images of various Earth creatures. "These are wolves," she said, showing fanged quadrupeds that bore a striking resemblance to smaller Vrex'Nar apex predators, pack hunters highly territorial for thousands of years. They competed with humans for resources. The image shifted to show similar creatures in various sizes and colors, some alongside humans, in domestic settings. "These are dogs," Parker continued. "The same species, genetically speaking, but transformed through generations of selective breeding and training. They became our companions, protectors, workers, an entirely different relationship than the one we had with their wild ancestors." I clicked my mandibles thoughtfully. "You domesticated them more than that," Parker said. "We formed a mutual bond. They learned to read our emotions, anticipate our needs. We learned to communicate with them in ways neither species had evolved. The Taming Protocol revealed specifically to do. And this wasn't a one-time event. More images appeared: large, 4-legged creatures with impressive musculature, small, furry creatures with whiskers, flying creatures with colorful plumage, horses, cats, birds of prey. Dozens of species entered into partnership with humans, some for practical purposes, others purely for companionship. The point is, we developed neurological and behavioral adaptations specifically for interspecies relationships. The implications were beginning to dawn on me and the Vrex'Nar." Parker nodded when Grashtech lunged at Ambassador Washington. I didn't think I reacted the way my ancestors would have when confronting an aggressive predator: the slap, the tone, the eye contact. It wasn't a calculated diplomatic strategy. It was instinct, but that doesn't explain why it worked. I pointed out, "No, it doesn't." Parker agreed, "at least not until we understood more about Vrex'Nar social dynamics." After the incident, our xenobiologists were granted unprecedented access to Vrex'Nar biological data. What they discovered was fascinating. She pulled up new images. Vrex'Nar brain scans, alongside what I assumed were scans of Earth predators despite evolving on different planets. Certain neural structures were remarkably similar. The Vrex'Nar have hierarchical pack structures, not unlike wolves with complex dominance behaviors, and critically, they recognize dominance across species. So when you confronted Grashtak, I inadvertently triggered recognition pathways in his brain. Parker finished the same way, and Alpha Wolf asserts dominance over packmates. The slap wasn't about pain, it was about establishing hierarchy. But I considered this information carefully, and the Taming Protocol, Parker's expression, hardened slightly after Proxima. The Council's strategic command approached us. They'd been trying to contain the Vrex'Nar for decades without success. Conventional warfare was too costly, and the Vrex'Nar refused meaningful diplomatic engagement. They wanted to know if what happened with Grashtak could be replicated. Could it? I asked, already suspecting the answer, yes and no. Parker said it wasn't as simple as teaching other species to slap Vrex'Nar. The response had to do with specific human neurochemistry, vocal patterns, and body language, but we could train humans to consciously employ what I'd done instinctively. She paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. The Taming Protocol is officially described as a specialized diplomatic approach for engaging with aggressive species. Unofficially, it's the reason the Vrex'Nar went from being the Council's greatest threat to one of its most valuable assets in less than 5 years. The implications were staggering. You are saying humans domesticated an entire sentient species. Parker frowned. No, that term is problematic when applied to sentient beings. We established a relationship based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. The Vrex'Nar are still autonomous, still fierce warriors. They just direct that fierceness more constructively. Now, I wasn't entirely convinced by this distinction, but I journeyed to Cygnus Arm, pressed on, and Razor Fang. What happened to her for the first time? Parker's professional demeanor cracked slightly. A smile, a genuine one, not the predatory display from earlier, spread across her face. Razor Fang, or Supreme Commander Razor Scale as she's known officially now, leads the Council's most elite combat unit. She requested me, Asher advisor after Proxima. We have worked together for 7 years. You make it sound like you are friends. I observed, surprised friends, colleagues, battle siblings. The translation doesn't quite capture it. Parker said, the Vrex'Nar have a concept called cage. Those who have proven worthy of standing in the hunting circle. It's a relationship of profound respect. Before I could ask more questions, Parker's communication device chimed. She checked it, and immediately stood. Our time's up, she said. I have a deployment briefing, Commander. I still have dozens of questions. I protested this story is incomplete. Parker considered me for a moment. How much do you know about the situation in the Cygnus Arm? The question caught me off guard. The Cygnus Arm had been experiencing increasing raids from an unknown species, brutal, efficient attacks that left few survivors. The Council had been deploying military assets to the region for months, only what's been reported publicly. I admitted the attackers call themselves the Harvester Collective. Parker said they have consumed 3 civilizations before encountering Council space. The conventional forces have been ineffective against them. A chill ran through my neural pathways. And the Vrex'Nar being deployed. Alongside human advisors, Parker confirmed the first joint operation under the Taming Protocol to face a genuine existential threat. She walked Toei storage unit and retrieved what appeared to be combat gear. There's your story, Vel'Nara. Not what happened at Proxima Station. That's old news. The real story is what's happening now. My journalistic instincts surged. Take me with you. Parker looked genuinely surprised to an active combat zone. Absolutely not. I'm authorized for embedded. Reporting I countered my species can survive in vacuum for short periods, and I have covered conflicts before. If the Taming Protocol is being deployed against a new threat, the galaxy deserves to know. Parker studied me with those predatory eyes. You understand the risks. This isn't a diplomatic mission gone wrong or a border skirmish. The harvesters don't take prisoners. I understand, I said, trying to project confidence. Despite my rising anxiety after a long moment, Parker nodded. I will have to. Clear it with Razor Scale me if she agrees. You will be under our protection and our orders. Non-negotiable agreed. I said quickly before she could reconsider. Archer's communication device chimed again. She answered it, speaking rapidly in a human military dialect my translator struggled with after a brief conversation. She, battle against the harvesters, turned back to me. Looks like today's your lucky day, she said. Though her tone suggested she thought otherwise, Razorcale approved your request, apparently. She's curious about how we will be portrayed in your article. She tossed me a compact environment suit designed for my species. We deploy in 30 minutes, gear up the journey to the Cygnus. Arm took 3 days in hyperspace. I spent most of it observing the fascinating dynamics between the human advisors and their Vrex'Nar counterparts. The relationship wasn't what I'd expected, not master and pet nor officer and soldier, but something uniquely balanced. Parker and Razor Scale operated as equals, each deferring to the other's expertise in different situations. The other human Vrex'Nar pairs showed similar dynamics, though none quite matched the easy synchronicity of the two commanders. How does it work? I asked Parker during a quiet moment in the ship's observation deck, the actual implementation of the taming. Protocol. Parker glanced around to ensure we were alone. It's not mind control. If that's what you are wondering, there are specific techniques, vocalizations, postures, pheromone combinations that trigger responses in Vrex'Nar neurology, but it only works because they allow it to work. That seems contradictory, I pointed out. Not really. Parker said think of it like a behavioral framework. The techniques establish boundaries and expectations, but within those boundaries, the Vrex'Nar maintain their agency. They choose to respond because the relationship benefits them. How I pressed Parker. Considered. The Vrex'Nar evolved as apex predators, but their social structures have always been their limitation. Too much internal competition, too. Much aggression turned inward. Human guidance provides focus before she could elaborate. Alarms blared throughout the ship. We'd arrived at our destination. The scene that greeted us was chaos. A harvester vessel. Massive, biomechanical, utterly alien was. Attacking a council outpost, smaller craft swarmed around it like parasites breaching the station's defenses. Observation bay, only Parker ordered Mies. She suited up. The feed from our combat recorders will give you all the footage you need. I complied, securing myself in the reinforced chamber that would allow me to watch the operation safely. From there, I observed as Parker, Razor Scale, and their joint strike team prepared for deployment. What happened next was unlike any combat operation I'd ever witnessed. The human Vrex'Nar teams moved with uncanny coordination, communicating through a combination of vocalizations, gestures, and what appeared to be shared tactical intuition. Parker didn't give orders to Razor Scale. She provided information highlighted. Opportunities occasionally redirected excess aggression. Razor scaled her warriors with brutal efficiency, adapting instantly to Parker's inputs while maintaining command authority. Through my observation window, I watched as they breached the harvester vessel. The combat was savage, with the harvesters revealing themselves to be insectoid creatures with technological implants and hive mind coordination. They outnumbered the strike team significantly, but numbers meant little against the focused fury of the Vrex'Nar. Guided by human strategic insight, at a critical moment the strike team became separated. Parker and Razor Scale found themselves cornered by a group of harvester elites, larger, more heavily augmented warriors. What I witnessed then would change my understanding of both species forever, but Parker and Razor Scale moved as one entity, covering each other's vulnerabilities, amplifying each other's strengths. When Parker was injured, Razor Scale's response wasn't just protective, it was precise. Calculated rage, she didn't abandon. Strategy for vengeance, she incorporated vengeance into strategy, and Parker, despite her wound, performed what I can only describe as a smaller version of the Taming Protocol in reverse. her the real meaning of partnership vocalizations, and gestures didn't restrain Razor-Scale's aggression. They channeled it, focused it like a weapon together. They eliminated threats that should have overwhelmed them, secured their objective, the Harvester command node, and extracted safely hours later. As the medical team treated Parker's injuries, Razor-Scale stood guard, refusing to leave her partner's side. I approached cautiously, aware that of Vrex'Nar's protective instincts made them unpredictable. "The Commander Razor-Scale," I said, maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm Vel'Nara, the journalist accompanying your mission." Razor-Scale's three eyes fixed on me with predatory intensity. "The storyteller," she said, her translator rendering her Vrex'Nar. "Speech into Council Standard, Parker spoke of, you I witnessed your combat effectiveness." I said, "The connection between you and Commander Parker is remarkable." Razor-Scale's mouthplates shifted in what I recognized as the Vrex'Nar equivalent of a contemplative expression. "Humans are unique," she said finally. "They do not fear us yet. They do not challenge us unnecessarily. They understand strength and respect it." "The Taming Protocol," I began, "is a poor name." Razor-Scale interrupted. "We are not tamed. We are focused before humans." Vrex'Nar fought. Vrex'Nar as often as we fought others. Internal. Dominance consumed us humans, showed us a different path through a slap. I couldn't help asking. To my surprise, Razor-Scale made a sound that my translator identified as laughter. The slap was merely the beginning. What followed was understanding. Parker stirred on the medical bed, her eyes opening groggy, trying to steal my journalist. Razor-Scale, merely ensuring your story is properly told. The Vrex'Nar commander replied. Parker's gaze shifted to me. "Did you get what you needed, Vel'Nara? Your big story?" I considered the question carefully. I had come seeking an expose on how humans had somehow subdued the galaxy's most feared predators. What I had found instead was something far more complex. A genuine partnership between species that by all evolutionary logic should have been locked in eternal conflict. "I think I did," I said, "though it's not the story I expected to write." "The best ones never are," Parker said, wincing as she attempted to sit up. Razor-Scale gently but firmly pressed her back down. "Rest, Parker. The battle is won." The tenderness in that gesture from a creature capable of tearing through reinforced bulkheads told me more than any official briefing could have. "One last question. I said you called it the Taming Protocol for the Council. Records, but what do you call it among yourselves?" Parker and Razor-Scale exchanged a look. Conclusion that conveyed volumes of shared experience. "Officially nothing." Parker said, "It's just protocol unofficially." I pressed friendship. Razor-Scale said the words, sounding strange through her translator, "and a human concept we have found applicable." As I left the medical bay to prepare my report, I reflected on Krezznik's warning that some stories aren't meant to be told. He was wrong. This story needed telling, but not as an expose on human dominance techniques or the subjugation of a predator species. The real story was simpler and more profound. In a galaxy of countless species, humans weren't unique for their technology, longevity, or natural weapons. Their superpower was the ability to turn potential enemies into allies through understanding rather than force. The most dangerous predators in the galaxy hadn't been taken down by a slap. They had been lifted up by a hand extended in partnership. And that, dear readers, is a far more interesting story than the one I set out to tell. Vel'Nara, Senior Correspondent, Galactic Perspectives.